I exposed her manipulation, walked away from toxic betrayal, reclaimed my power, and built a new life, proving what never again truly means for me. Unforgettable. Our connection was immediate and intense. Within weeks, we were inseparable. She called constantly, planned surprise dates, and made me feel like the center of her universe. For 6 months, everything seemed perfect. Then subtle changes began. It started with small things, texts that took hours to receive responses, plans canceled at the last minute with increasingly flimsy excuses. The passionate woman who once couldn't wait to see me was gradually being replaced by someone who treated me like a convenient option. I ignored the warning signs, making excuses for her behavior. When friends pointed out how dismissive she had become in public, I defended her. When she began turning weekend plans into brief coffee meetings, I convinced myself she was just busy. Like a slowly boiling frog, I failed to notice the rising temperature until it was nearly too late. The breaking point came on my birthday. We had planned a weekend getaway for months. 2 days before, she called claiming she needed to cancel because her friends had organized an emergency girls' night. Something in her voice sounded off, but I accepted it without argument. That night, while having a solitary dinner at the restaurant where we were supposed to celebrate together, my phone buzzed with notifications. A mutual friend had tagged her in photos from a rooftop party downtown. She wasn't with her girlfriends. She was hanging on the arm of her coworker, the one she had repeatedly assured me was just a friend. My first instinct was to call and demand answers. Instead, I set my phone down and finished my meal. The waiter asked if everything was all right. I replied, with perfect calm, that I'd never been better, left a generous tip, and walked out with my head high. That night changed everything, not because of what she did, but because of what I didn't do. I didn't call her. I didn't text angry accusations. I didn't post passive-aggressive comments. Instead, I made a decision that would eventually show her exactly what she had taken for granted. When she finally called the next day, I answered with detached politeness. She launched into elaborate explanations about how the girls' night had unexpectedly changed venues and how her coworker had just happened to be there. I let her finish her performance, then calmly stated that I had seen the photos and knew she was lying. The panic in her voice was immediate. She shifted to tearful apologies, claiming nothing had happened between them. I cut her off mid-sentence. "We'll talk about this when I'm ready, not before." Then I hung up. For the next week, she bombarded me with messages, first apologetic, then increasingly desperate, as my responses remained minimal and emotionless. She wasn't used to this version of me, the version who didn't chase, didn't beg for explanations, didn't need her approval. When we finally met, it was on my terms, at a time and place of my choosing. She arrived with tear-streaked eyes and rehearsed apologies, expecting the same pattern we'd established, her taking me for granted, me forgiving and waiting patiently for her attention. She had no idea I was about to shatter that pattern completely. She thought I would always wait for her, always be available whenever she decided to pay attention to me again. She was about to learn exactly what never again feels like. The cafe where we met for our conversation had floor-to-ceiling windows that filled the space with harsh sunlight. She arrived 15 minutes early, already seated at our usual corner table with 2 coffees, a performance of thoughtfulness that came far too late. When I walked in, her eyes widened slightly at my appearance. I had taken unusual care that morning, crisp button-down, tailored jacket, and the watch she had given me for Christmas, now conspicuously absent from my wrist. I sat down without rushing, maintaining eye contact without emotion. "Thank you for meeting me," she began, voice trembling slightly. "I've been going crazy thinking about how much I hurt you. Nothing happened with him, I swear. It was stupid and thoughtless, but—" I raised my hand slightly, and she stopped mid-sentence. "Before you continue, I want to be clear about something. I'm not here for explanations or apologies. I'm here to tell you what happens next." Her practiced speech derailed. She blinked rapidly. This wasn't the conversation she had rehearsed in her head. "What do you mean?" I took out my phone, opened our text conversation, and placed it on the table between us. "You told me you were with your friends. That was a lie." I slid the phone closer to her. "You've been lying for weeks. This isn't a single mistake. It's a pattern." Her eyes darted between my face and the screen, showing her messages alongside the time-stamped photos from the party. The careful narrative she had constructed was collapsing. She reached for my hand across the table, I withdrew it smoothly before she could make contact. Don't. Tears welled in her eyes, the same tears that had worked so effectively in past disagreements. Please. You have to understand. I made a terrible mistake. I was confused, but I know now what I want. What we have is special. We can work through this. What exactly do we have? I asked with genuine curiosity. A relationship where you cancel plans last minute? Where you lie about who you're with? Where I'm your backup option? She flinched at each question, then shifted strategies. You're overreacting. Nothing physical happened. Are you really going to throw away 2 years over one night? A small, cold smile formed on my lips. I'm not throwing away anything. You already did that. I'm simply acknowledging what's already happened. Her expression hardened slightly, frustration breaking through the performance of remorse. So that's it? You won't even try? One mistake and you're done? The mistake wasn't going to the party. The mistake wasn't even lying about it. The mistake was thinking I would always be waiting, no matter how you treated me. I took a sip of the coffee she'd ordered for me. From now on, things will be different. Different how? Uncertainty crept into her voice. For the past year, you've set the terms of this relationship. You decided when we met, how much time we spent together, how much effort you put in. That's over now. Her eyes narrowed. Are you breaking up with me? I'm breaking up with who you've become, with the relationship you created. I stood, buttoning my jacket. I deserve someone who sees me as a priority, not an option. Someone who respects me enough to be honest. Please, she whispered, grabbing my wrist. I can be that person. Just give me another chance. I looked down at her hand until she released me. You had that chance every day for the past year. You made your choice repeatedly. Now I'm making mine. As I turned to leave, she called out loud enough for nearby tables to hear. So you're just going to walk away after everything we've been through? I paused, turned back, and delivered the words that would echo in her mind for months to come. No. You walked away a long time ago. You just expected me to keep following. That ends today. The cafe door closed behind me with quiet finality. My phone immediately began buzzing with her calls and messages, but I didn't look back. For the first time in our relationship, I was setting the terms. And the first term was this: her access to me was no longer guaranteed. The weeks that followed our confrontation at the cafe revealed aspects of her character I had never fully acknowledged. As my silence continued, her tactics evolved from tearful pleas to calculated manipulation, each attempt more transparent than the last. First came the flood of messages, apologies, and promises in the morning, accusations of cruelty by afternoon, declarations of undying love at night. I read each one without responding, watching the desperate escalation with detached interest. When digital bombardment failed, she enlisted mutual friends as unwitting messengers. She's really hurting, they would say, concern in their eyes. She made a mistake, but she's miserable without you. I responded with the same calm statement each time: this is between us. I appreciate your concern, but I've made my decision. 2 weeks into my silence, she appeared outside my workplace wearing the dress from our first date, hair styled exactly as I once mentioned I liked, a calculated visual reminder of better times. I nodded politely as I passed her, offering a cordial hope you're well before continuing to my car. Her surprise at my composure was evident. She had expected either anger she could label as overreaction or weakness she could exploit. My calm indifference offered neither. She followed me to the parking lot, voice rising with each step. So that's it? You won't even talk to me? After 2 years, I don't even deserve a conversation. I turned, keeping my expression neutral. We had our conversation at the cafe. There's nothing more to discuss. You're being childish, she snapped, frustration replacing her practiced vulnerability. Everyone makes mistakes. You're throwing away something real because your ego can't handle one night. Several colleagues had stopped to watch the scene unfold. This was no coincidence. She had chosen a public setting deliberately, betting I wouldn't risk looking like the villain in front of people I respected. Is that what you tell yourself? I asked quietly. That this is about my ego, not about the consistent disrespect you've shown for months, not about the deliberate lies? She stepped closer, lowering her voice to an urgent whisper. Please, can we just go somewhere private and talk about this like adults? No. The simplicity of my refusal visibly startled her. I'm not interested in private conversations where you can rewrite reality without witnesses. If you have something to say, you can say it here. Her composure fractured. Fine. You want to do this here in front of everyone? You're making a huge mistake. No one will ever love you like I do. No one will ever understand you like I do. I allowed a small smile. That's the first honest thing you've said in months. No one will ever love me exactly like you do, with conditions, convenience, and constant manipulation. I'm counting on that. The gathering audience made no attempt to hide their interest now. Her plan to publicly shame me had backfired spectacularly. She made one final desperate attempt, eyes welling with tears. "Please," she whispered, reaching for my hand. "I miss you. I miss us." I stepped back, maintaining the physical boundary. There is no us anymore. There's just you, facing the consequences of your choices. As I turned to leave, she called after me, voice breaking. "So you're really done? Just like that?" I paused without turning back. "I was done the moment you decided I wasn't worth respecting. The rest has just been formality." That evening, social media exploded with activity. She had posted a carefully edited version of our encounter, painting herself as the heartbroken victim of my unreasonable coldness. Mutual friends took sides, some publicly questioning my character. I didn't engage. I didn't defend. I posted nothing. Instead, I blocked her accounts and restricted those who chose to participate in the drama. My silence spoke volumes where words would have only fueled the fire. 3 days later, she tried again, this time appearing at my gym during my regular morning workout. Her approach had shifted from emotional appeals to provocative challenge. "You can't even defend yourself online," she said, sliding onto the bench next to mine. "Everyone thinks you're the bad guy now. Is that what you want?" I continued my set without breaking rhythm. "What everyone thinks isn't my concern. I know the truth. So do you. This silent treatment is pathetic," she pressed. "At least have the courage to fight for what we had." I set the weights down, meeting her gaze directly. "Fighting implies there's something worth winning. There isn't anymore." My words landed with unexpected weight. For the first time, real understanding flickered across her face. This wasn't a negotiation. It wasn't a temporary punishment until she found the right combination of words or tactics. It was final. As I gathered my things to leave, she remained seated, expression lost. The performance had fallen away, revealing genuine shock. She had finally realized the truth. Her power over me was gone, and it wasn't coming back. 3 months passed. I redirected the energy I'd once spent analyzing her mixed signals into rebuilding myself. Morning workouts became longer and more intense. Projects at work that I'd neglected received my full attention. Weekends once reserved for navigating her unpredictable moods were now filled with activities I'd abandoned. Hiking, photography, reconnecting with friends who had drifted away during my relationship. My transformation wasn't just internal. A promotion at work came with an office upgrade. My wardrobe evolved from comfortable to commanding. Even my posture changed, shoulders back, head high, the unconscious physical manifestation of a man who no longer sought external validation. I hadn't completely cut contact with our mutual friend circle, though I had become more selective about which invitations I accepted. Through these connections, news of her life occasionally reached me. She had cycled through several dramatic social media phases, from posting cryptic quotes about betrayal to suddenly showcasing an exaggerated party lifestyle. Each new persona seemed designed to elicit a reaction I never provided. The coworker she'd been with at the party had apparently lasted only a few weeks before being discarded. According to friends, she spoke of me often, alternating between painting herself as the victim of my emotional unavailability and claiming complete indifference to my absence. I was enjoying dinner with colleagues after closing a major client deal when our paths crossed again. The restaurant was upscale, the kind that required reservations weeks in advance. I was seated at the head of the table, midway through describing the strategy that had secured the contract, when she walked in with a small group. Her eyes found mine immediately, as though some sixth sense had alerted her to my presence. I acknowledged her with a brief, polite nod before returning my attention to my dinner companions. From my peripheral vision, I saw her whisper something to her friends, clearly discussing my presence. I continued my conversation without missing a beat. 15 minutes later, as our table was finishing appetizers, one of the servers approached with a bottle of champagne. "Compliments of the lady at the bar," he said, gesturing toward her. I smiled at the server. "Please thank her for the gesture, but we've already ordered our preferences." I handed him my card. "And please add her table's first round to my tab, a small celebration of my own tonight." The power move wasn't lost on anyone watching. I had acknowledged her gesture while simultaneously establishing that I wasn't affected by it, and positioning myself as the more generous party without engaging directly. As we continued our meal, I noticed her glancing repeatedly in my direction. By dessert, she had separated from her group and was making her way toward our table. I excused myself from my colleagues and intercepted her halfway, preventing her from approaching the entire group. "You look well," she said, eyes scanning me for any reaction. "The promotion suits you." "Thank you," I replied with genuine but measured warmth. "How have you been?" "Good, busy." She tilted her head, studying me. "You never returned any of my messages." I said everything I needed to say. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You didn't give us a real chance to fix things." There was nothing to fix. I maintained comfortable distance between us. Some bridges, once broken, aren't meant to be repaired. They're meant to be lessons about where not to walk again. Frustration flickered across her features. "So that's it? 2 years erased?" "Not erased. Completed." I glanced back at my table where my colleagues were politely pretending not to watch our interaction. "If you'll excuse me, we're celebrating tonight." She placed her hand on my arm, a familiar gesture that once would have weakened my resolve. "I miss you. The real you, not this. Whoever you're pretending to be now." I looked down at her hand until she removed it. "The man you knew was the pretense. This is who I always was beneath the compromise." Her expression hardened. "They won't know you like I did. They won't understand your insecurities, your fears." I smiled, genuinely amused by the transparent attempt. "You mistake familiarity for understanding. You never saw me clearly, only the version of me that served your needs." I stepped back, creating final distance. "I wish you well. Truly." As I returned to my table, I felt her eyes following me. For the first time since our breakup, I recognized the emotion behind her gaze, genuine regret, not for hurting me, but for losing the power she once held. My colleagues raised eyebrows as I rejoined them. "Old friend?" one asked diplomatically. "No," I replied, raising my glass. "Old lesson." Now, where were we? Later that night, my phone lit up with a message from her. "You've changed." I read it once, then deleted it without response. Of course I had changed. That had been the point all along. The difference was that my transformation had been deliberate evolution, not performance for an audience of one. I slept soundly that night without the anxious checking of messages that had once been my nightly ritual. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, and none of them would involve wondering where I stood with someone who had never truly valued my presence. 6 months after our restaurant encounter, my life had settled into a rewarding rhythm entirely of my own design. The promotion had evolved into a leadership position that took me to conferences across the country. My social circle had expanded beyond the insular group we once shared. Dating had resumed, casual and unhurried, with women who respected clear boundaries and direct communication. I hadn't heard from her directly since that night at the restaurant, though occasional updates filtered through mutual connections. She had apparently cycled through several short relationships, none lasting more than a few weeks. According to friends, she still brought up my name in conversations, questioning whether I was truly happy or just putting on a show. The industry conference in Chicago marked a significant milestone for my career. I had been invited as a keynote speaker, recognition of the innovative approaches I'd implemented over the past year. The evening reception following my presentation was crowded with potential clients and industry leaders eager to continue conversations started during the day. I was deep in discussion with the CEO of a partner company when a familiar perfume cut through the ambient sense of the ballroom. Even before turning, I knew she was there. Some primal recognition that refused to fade despite the months of separation. She stood across the room in a midnight blue dress that complemented her eyes, watching me over the rim of a champagne flute. Not a coincidence. She had deliberately tracked my public speaking schedule through professional networks we still shared. I excused myself from the conversation and made my way toward the bar, deliberately taking a path that wouldn't intersect with her position. She adjusted her trajectory immediately, intercepting me before I reached my destination. "Impressive speech today," she said, stepping directly into my path. "Though I always knew you were capable of more than you showed with our old company." She had traveled across 3 states to create this chance meeting, yet was attempting to frame it as a professional coincidence. The calculation behind the move was so transparent it was almost pitiable. "Thank you," I replied with professional courtesy. "Are you attending the full conference?" "Just arrived this afternoon." She smiled, the practiced warmth not quite reaching her eyes. I heard you were speaking and thought it might be nice to reconnect. It's been a while. I nodded, maintaining polite neutrality. It has. How have you been? For 20 minutes we engaged in the type of conversation strangers might have at a networking event. She mentioned career developments, I commented appropriately. No reference to our shared past, though it hung in the air between us, acknowledged but unopened. As the reception began winding down, she made her actual move. Some of us are continuing the evening at the hotel bar. You should join us. The casual invitation was delivered with deliberate eye contact that suggested this was about more than professional networking. I appreciate the invitation, but I have an early meeting tomorrow. Preparation materials I need to review tonight. Disappointment flickered across her features, followed by determination. Just one drink, for old time's sake. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. I've missed you more than I expected to. 6 months ago, those words might have triggered hope or anger. Now they simply existed as information, carrying no emotional weight. I studied her face, recognizing the familiar pattern of calculated vulnerability she had always deployed when other approaches failed. I think we've both moved forward, I replied calmly, and that's for the best. Her expression hardened slightly. Have we? Because it seems like you're still punishing me for one mistake, holding a grudge instead of accepting that people are flawed. I smiled, genuinely amused by the familiar deflection. This isn't punishment, it's consequence, and not just for that night, but for the pattern that led to it. So the great motivational speaker can't practice what he preaches about growth and second chances? The edge in her voice was becoming more pronounced, frustrated by my continued equanimity. Second chances require changed behavior, not just regret over consequences. I nodded toward a group of conference attendees who were watching our increasingly intense conversation with curious eyes. This isn't the place for this discussion. She seized the opening. You're right, let's go somewhere quieter. No. The simplicity of my refusal visibly startled her. There's nothing left to discuss between us, not because I'm angry or hurt, but because we've become different people walking different paths. That's it? Her voice rose slightly, drawing more attention from nearby groups. The public scene she was creating was deliberate, a final attempt to force engagement through social pressure. I leaned closer, speaking quietly enough that only she could hear. What exactly did we share? You wanted possession, not partnership. Control, not connection. I was never fully seen in that relationship, only used according to your changing needs. Her eyes widened at the directness of my assessment. For the first time, I saw genuine emotion break through her calculated performance, raw hurt untempered by manipulation. That's not fair, she whispered. Perhaps not, but it's honest. Something our relationship rarely was. I stepped back, creating final distance. I wish you well. I genuinely hope you find what you're looking for. As I turned to leave, she called after me loud enough for others to hear. So, that's it? You're not even going to try? I paused, then turned back to face her one last time. The room had quieted, attention had shifted to our exchange. Once this public scrutiny would have made me fold, eager to avoid conflict at any cost. Now it meant nothing compared to my own internal compass. There's nothing to try for, I replied with calm finality. What we had wasn't healthy or real. It was convenience masked as connection. You never wanted me, you wanted what I provided: security, admiration, consistency. When those became inconvenient, they became disposable, just like I was. Her mouth opened, then closed without response. For once, the practiced script had failed her. Goodbye, I said simply, then walked away. This time, as I exited, there were no messages later that night, no attempts to rewrite the narrative. The performance had finally ended. The curtain had fallen on a play that had run far too long. What remained was just clarity, clean, unfettered by past expectations or fear of loss. In that moment, watching the city lights from my hotel window, I realized that never again wasn't about her at all. It was about me and the standards I would now hold immovable for anyone who wished to enter my life. 1 year from the day I walked away at the cafe, my life had transformed completely. The promotion had evolved into a directorship role. My social circle had expanded beyond what I thought possible. The man who once arranged his schedule around someone else's whims now lived entirely on his own terms. Dating had become an enjoyable experience rather than an exercise in anxiety. I approached relationships with clear expectations and boundaries. Some connections lasted weeks, others months. each teaching me something valuable about what I truly wanted in a partner. More importantly, I had rediscovered parts of myself that had faded during our relationship. Solo travel to destinations I'd always wanted to visit, rekindled friendships with people who genuinely valued my presence, the simple pleasure of making decisions based solely on my preferences, without calculating potential disapproval. I was celebrating my birthday at an upscale restaurant with close friends when fate delivered one final test. She walked in with a small group, freezing momentarily when our eyes met across the room. Unlike our previous encounters, she made no attempt to approach. Throughout the evening, I caught her watching our table, noting the easy laughter and genuine connections on display. As my party was preparing to leave, one of the servers approached with a note. Her handwriting was instantly recognizable. Elegant cursive requesting 5 minutes of conversation outside. No pressure, just closure. My friends exchanged knowing glances as I explained the situation. "Want us to wait?" one asked. I shook my head, confident in my ability to maintain boundaries. She was waiting near the valet stand, hands tucked into her coat pockets against the autumn chill. No makeup manipulation this time. Her appearance was understated, authentic in a way I hadn't seen since our early days. "Thank you for meeting me," she said as I approached. "I wasn't sure you would. What can I do for you?" I asked, maintaining comfortable distance. "Nothing, actually." She smiled, a genuine expression without the calculated warmth of previous encounters. "I just wanted to say something I should have said months ago." I nodded, giving her space to continue. "You were right," she said simply. "About everything, about how I treated you, about what I was really looking for." She took a deep breath. "It took losing you completely to realize what I had and what I became." The admission surprised me, not because I hadn't known these truths, but because I never expected her to acknowledge them. "I've been in therapy," she continued when I didn't immediately respond. "Real therapy, not just the performance of self-improvement. It's been enlightening and painful." "I'm glad you're getting help," I said, meaning it sincerely. "I don't expect forgiveness or reconciliation." She met my eyes directly. "That's not why I wanted to talk to you. I just thought you deserved to hear that you weren't wrong, that it wasn't in your head, that the man who finally walked away had every right to do so." A year ago, these words would have meant everything, validation I had desperately sought during those confusing final months together. Now they were simply facts acknowledged, but no longer needed for my peace. "Thank you for telling me," I replied. "I hope the work you're doing brings you clarity." She nodded, then asked the question that had clearly been on her mind. "Are you happy?" Truly. I considered the question, not out of uncertainty, but to give it the honest reflection it deserved. Yes, not because of what happened between us, but because of what I built afterward. "I'm glad." Her smile held traces of genuine regret. "You deserve that." As my car arrived, she made no attempt to prolong the conversation or suggest future contact. The performance that had characterized our last encounters was notably absent, replaced by something approaching authentic accountability. "Take care of yourself," I said as I prepared to leave. "You too." She paused, then added, "Thank you for showing me what self-respect actually looks like, even if I learned too late." As I drove away, I realized something profound had shifted. Not in my feelings about her or our past, those had been resolved months ago. The shift was in how I viewed the entire experience. What had once been a painful chapter was now merely a necessary lesson in my evolution. The following week, I met someone unexpected, not a replacement or an antidote to the past, but a genuine connection built on mutual respect and authentic communication. For the first time, I entered a relationship not from need or habit, but from a position of complete self-sufficiency. When friends asked if I was worried about history repeating itself, I could honestly say no, not because this new person was fundamentally different, though she was, not because I had become cynical or guarded, because I hadn't. The difference was in me, in the boundaries I now maintained without apology, in my unwillingness to compromise core needs for momentary peace, in my ability to walk away from anything that diminished rather than enhanced my life. 6 months later, I received a wedding invitation from a mutual friend. I knew she would be there, part of the same social circle that had witnessed our relationship's dissolution. The man who once would have declined to avoid uncomfortable encounters now accepted without hesitation. Her presence no longer held any power over my choices. At the reception, we exchanged polite greetings. The awkwardness of our history was softened by genuine growth on both sides. She had continued her therapy, met someone who understood her past patterns and helped her create healthier ones. I was genuinely happy for her progress. As I watched her from across the room, engaged in animated conversation with her new partner, I felt the final threads of our connection dissolve completely, not in anger or resentment, but in genuine release. The woman who once held such power over my emotions was now simply someone I used to know. The journey from that solitary birthday dinner to this peaceful moment had taught me the most valuable lesson of all. Never again wasn't about shutting people out, but about knowing exactly what to let in. About having the courage to walk away from connections that diminished rather than enhanced my life. About understanding that real strength isn't found in enduring mistreatment, but in refusing to accept anything less than respect. She had thought I would wait forever, accepting crumbs of attention and making excuses for inconsistency. Instead, I had shown her, and more importantly myself, exactly what never again feels like. Not a threat or a punishment, but a promise to myself that would never be broken again. Our story has come to an end. If you've made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I've selected 2 other videos for you that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I'll be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.